On a foggy November morning in 1989, two U.S. Air Force F-15 Eagle fighter jets screamed across the bleak sky above the East European nation of Slovakia. Their mission was simple: intercept the trespassing Soviet MiG-29s. But these two American pilots soon realized that their Soviet counterparts had other plans. In a stunning turn of events, the Russians managed to launch a surprise ambush, catching the unsuspecting Americans right off guard. Today, we delve into the details of this daring attack, revealing how the Soviets nearly outmaneuvered the formidable F-15s. Prior to the confrontation, tensions had been high in the region, with the United States and its NATO allies conducting regular air patrols over Eastern Europe. These missions were designed not only to monitor Soviet activities, but also to send a clear message of deterrence. However, on that fateful day, a routine patrol turned into a tense standoff. The two F-15s, call signs Sparky 103 and Sparky 106, were dispatched to intercept a pair of Soviet MiG-29 Fulcrums that had strayed into restricted airspace near the Slovak-Hungarian border. As they raced toward the intruders, the F-15 pilots prepared for the possibility of a dogfight. The MiG-29, known for its incredible maneuverability, was a formidable opponent, particularly in close-quarters combat. But the American pilots had the advantage of superior radar and long-range missiles. It seemed the outcome of this aerial duel would come down to who could best utilize their aircraft's capabilities. Suddenly, the picture became clearer. The Soviet planes, instead of retreating, were vectored in on the F-15s. As the two American jets made their way to intercept the intruding Soviet aircraft, they found themselves in a race against time. With each passing moment, the risk of escalation increased. They had orders to identify themselves and stand down if necessary, but they also had authorization to fire if the Soviets made any aggressive moves. As the two F-15s closed in on the MiG-29s, they got ready to issue a challenge. But then something unexpected happened. The Soviet pilots ignored repeated calls, and the ensuing confusion created an opening for the MiG-29s to pull off a daring move. They turned tail and vanished into the thick fog bank that blanketed the mountainous terrain. Now, it wasn't just the bad weather conditions that posed a challenge. The dense cover provided by the clouds allowed the MiG-29s to remain hidden, making them virtually invisible to the advanced American radar systems. It was a tactical masterstroke that placed the F-15s at a significant disadvantage. Meanwhile, the Soviet pilots wasted no time in formulating their plan. They knew they had to act quickly to capitalize on the element of surprise. So they decided to use the very terrain that had shielded them to set up an ambush. The mountains became their ally as they positioned themselves in such a way that when the F-15s emerged from the fog, they would be directly in the firing line of the Soviet anti-aircraft missiles. It was a risky move, but one that could pay off big if executed successfully. As the F-15s continued their search, the minutes ticked by. Each passing moment increased the urgency of the situation. The stakes were high. A confrontation between American and Soviet aircraft was something that could potentially escalate into a full-blown international incident. Then, just when the pilots began to think that the MiG-29s had gotten away, the radar operator in Sparky 103's jet spotted a blip on the radar screen. It was faint, almost indiscernible, but it was there. The pilot, Captain Bob Robson, locked his eyes onto the blip, knowing that it might lead them to the elusive Soviet jets. He adjusted the controls, guiding his aircraft towards the anomaly in the hopes of finding the missing MiG-29s. But the question remained, would they find the Soviet jets in time before they managed to escape? Or were the MiG-29 pilots too clever and the Americans once again outfoxed? The tension in the cockpit was palpable as Captain Robson and his wingman, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Gator Hall, moved closer to the suspected location of the MiG-29s. As the F-15s approached the area, the Soviet anti-aircraft defense system went into action. Red flags were raised and missiles were launched into the sky, forming a virtual net to trap the incoming American jets. Suddenly, through the haze of the heavy clouds, the pilots could see the lurking danger below. The mountain peaks were now clearly visible, marking the potential path of the incoming missiles. In the midst of this unfolding drama, Captain Robson's radio crackled to life. The voice of the controller was grave. "Sparky 103, this is approach. We have multiple bandit bogies on your nose bearing 270 degrees, level at 4 o'clock. You are being vectored into a possible kill zone." His voice was urgent, leaving no doubt about the gravity of the situation. With this chilling warning, Captain Robson found himself in a precarious position. The fate of the mission, perhaps even larger implications, hung in the balance as he raced to respond. But amidst the chaos, a key detail stood out. The bogies were at 4 o'clock, which meant they were behind him. As the F-15 sliced through the clouds, the grim reality of the situation became clear. They were flying straight into a well-laid ambush, and the Soviets, with their superior knowledge of the terrain and use of the element of surprise, had the upper hand. The first missile streaked towards its target, a fiery streak of red against the backdrop of the cloudy sky. It was followed by another and another, until a barrage of missiles filled the sky. In the cockpit, alarms blared, lights flashed, and the whine of the engines filled the air as the F-15s dodged and weaved to evade the incoming missiles. As the dogfight intensified, the roles reversed dramatically. The F-15, known for its exceptional radar and missile capabilities, found itself at a disadvantage. The nimble MiG-29s danced just beyond the reach of their missiles, taunting the Americans with their maneuverability. In response, the F-15 pilots had to make split-second decisions, changing directions, banking sharply, all in an effort to get a clear shot at their elusive opponents. Meanwhile, the MiG-29 pilots, masters of their aircraft, used every trick in the book, exploiting every inch of their plane's capabilities to stay just out of range. And as the fight raged on, the question hung in the balance. Who would prevail? Would the F-15s with their superior technology eventually wear down the agile MiG-29s, or would the Soviets, riding high on their early success, manage to hold on? Only time would tell. But as the fight reached its peak, a critical question loomed over the dogfight. How long could the MiG-29s keep this up? The Soviet pilots, while skilled, couldn't maintain their high-G maneuvers indefinitely. Fatigue was setting in, and the longer the fight dragged on, the more their options would become limited. This realization prompted a change in tactics. The MiG-29s, realizing they couldn't outmaneuver the F-15s indefinitely, began to employ a hit-and-run strategy. They would dart out from behind the mountains, unleash a barrage of missiles, then vanish back into the safety of the terrain before the F-15s could respond. Each time they appeared, they seemed to materialize out of thin air, catching the F-15s off guard. This tactic was not only effective, but it also served to amplify the sense of uncertainty and pressure on the American pilots. Despite the challenge, the F-15 pilots held their ground. They knew that eventually the MiG-29s would have to make a mistake, providing them with the opening they needed. It was a waiting game, a test of nerves and endurance as much as it was a battle of aerial skill. Finally, the moment arrived. The MiG-29 pilots, fatigued and likely feeling the pressure of the situation, made a critical error. They came out of the mountains too early, giving the F-15 pilots the chance they needed to turn the tables. As the F-15s closed in, the outcome of the fight became apparent. The superior radar and firepower of the American jets began to take their toll. The MiG-29s, valiant as they had been, were now on the defensive, desperately trying to shake off their pursuers. In the end, it was the F-15s that came out on top, forcing the MiG-29s to break off the fight and retreat into the safety of Soviet airspace. Despite the loss, the MiG-29 pilots had put up an impressive show, proving that with skill and cunning, they could hold their own against the formidable F-15s. News of the incident sent shockwaves through the aviation world. It was a rare instance where the underdog, the MiG-29, had managed to hold its own against the seemingly invincible F-15 Eagle. The Soviet pilots were hailed as heroes, their daring tactics and resilience becoming the stuff of legend. However, the larger implications of the incident were not lost on military strategists. It served as a wake-up call, a reminder that even the most advanced aircraft could be vulnerable if not properly utilized and supported. In the aftermath, lessons were learned, tactics were refined, and new strategies were developed. The incident became a pivotal point in the history of air combat, shaping the way future conflicts would be fought in the skies. So remember the day the MiG-29 launched a surprise ambush on the F-15 Eagles. Let it serve as a reminder that in the world of air combat, there are no underdogs, only those who utilize their strengths to overcome seemingly superior opponents.